And thanks for staying with Republic TV. We've got some breaking news coming in from the top court. The Supreme Court has now allowed the live streaming of court proceedings, and the court is also going to frame guidelines in this effect. Nalini, our legal correspondent, gets us more details. Nalini, over to you.
Yes, well, in a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court has today ruled that live streaming of court proceedings is going to be allowed from now on. They are going to begin the first phase soon as the guidelines to this regard are framed by the Supreme Court. What they've clearly said is this is something that will bring accountability into the judicial system. The fact that court proceedings will now be allowed to live stream. It was a petition filed by Indira Jaising, and she's been arguing for it for many months now. And finally, the Supreme Court three-judge bench, I beg your pardon, has gone ahead and allowed for the court proceedings to be live streamed. We'll have to wait and watch for the guidelines to see exactly how this is going to be done and exactly where all these live streaming is going to be broadcasted. But the Supreme Court can be expected to give out the guidelines shortly.
Anything, clarity on the nature of the cases, and are these going to be all cases, all courts? Anything more on that?
Well, Sakal, during the hearing, the Supreme Court had made it abundantly clear that this was going to be restricted to specific cases that were of national importance, more specifically cases that were being dealt by the Constitution bench. So it's not going to be live streaming of all the cases, but the Supreme Court, to this regard, is going to be framing the draft guidelines, which will lead us to more information about exactly the kind of cases that the Supreme Court is willing to actually live stream and bring into the public view. So we'll have to wait for guidelines to get further details on that. But during the hearing, the Supreme Court had made it clear that they will be live streaming only crucial cases of national importance, especially the cases being dealt by the Constitution bench, because those are the cases that are in reference to whether or not something or any particular law or any particular action by the government is in fact constitutional or unconstitutional. So mainly they're going to be starting with a few cases at first that they're going to set out in the first phase to be live streamed, and eventually if that is something that picks up, they will go further and deal with more cases that can be live streamed to the general public. Because I have a certain sympathy with
Nalini, stay with us. Talk a little bit more about the national importance cases, quote unquote, that you pointed out, the guidelines for which are going to be framed. And what about which courts? Has that also been specified? The Supreme Court or the High Court? Anything on those lines?
Well, Sakal, like I stated, it's in the phase one, it is initially going to be beginning from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court are going to pick out some handpicked cases that they are going to allow to be live streamed in the beginning. Of course, if the first phase goes successfully, because there's a lot of equipment, not only equipment involved, but a lot of guidelines that will go into this to figure out exactly how it needs to be done. So if the first phase is successful, it is extremely likely that the Supreme Court might go ahead and extend this to not only other courts, but also to other cases within the Supreme Court. So there might be a possibility that most of the cases in various courts across the country in a few years from now can actually be live streamed. But of course, all of that will be on the basis of hit and try method. The Supreme Court will initially begin only with live streaming apex court proceedings, as well as only cases of constitutional importance.
All right. In order to bring accountability in the judicial system, the court has decided to go ahead with the live streaming of cases of national importance. The guidelines to this effect will be framed soon. Breaking first on Republic. Thank you, Nalini.